Hello and welcome back to part 8. Today we are working on the belt wheels, and this will be the last video for the series, minus I might do an update video on any little modifications I'm making. But now let's get started on the wheels. So originally, to make the wheels, I wanted to 3D print them, and it was going to be a little bit curved like this so that the belt wouldn't fall off and it would be centered. So this is a 3D print. As you can see, it's red because I put Bondo in it to try to make it smoother, and it's pretty smooth. And then I started to think that maybe the 3D print would melt when I was sanding, so I didn't know if 3D printing was the best idea now. So instead I tried to sand cast it in aluminum. The issue was that there's a hole in this side right there, so I tried to fill it in with a little bit, and obviously that didn't work. I put way too much in on accident, but besides that, it looks pretty decent. I mean, it doesn't look that bad, but it takes like a whole day to set everything up and cast one half of this. So instead I tried to move towards doing wood, and as you can see, I already have one done, and this is the result from that. So basically there's a method with a table saw jig to get a perfect circle, and essentially, so like say that this is the blade, you have a piece of wood next to the blade, you put a hole in the piece of wood, you stick your part down, you go through while you turn to get a rough circle, and then at the cutting edge of the blade, then you go really slow, and then it makes a perfect circle. I'll put a link in the description of the person that I found the video from. It's a really good, short, straightforward video. And this was 3 pieces, so it's 1, 2, 3, and then I screwed them together, and I cut them all the same radius or diameter, whatever. And then on these 2 outer ones, I angled the blade just a little bit so we could kind of get that curvature to keep the belt on it. I'm hoping this will work. Haven't tested it. I still have to do the through hole for the axle shaft, and then on this inner one is where the bearing is going to go. And let me see if I have a bearing here. Okay, right here. So essentially the bearing is going to get put in right here in the middle. So that's why I chose this thinner board for the middle one, because I'm going to do a through hole the size of this bearing only on the middle one. So the bearing will get encapsulated inside of this, and then the shaft will be able to come out on either side. And then this is going to go, there's one right here, one right here, and then one on the bottom here. So I'm going to take you through another one, me making the second one, and then hopefully I can drill the hole for this, put it on, and it should work out decently. It's not perfectly balanced, but I think it'll work. So the first step is to just get a bunch of scrap wood. So these are like deck boards, and then this is plywood. So you might notice that these are different thicknesses, which is what I want, because this is 1 inch, 1/2 inch, and then 1 inch again. So the 1/2 inch is the same size as the bearing. So I'm going to sandwich the bearing between these 2 here. So after you get some scrap pieces, whatnot, you're going to mark the center, well, around the center. I just made this little cutout thing, and then I sharpied the middle. And then you're going to want to have a screw, and then a drill bit that's just smaller than the screw. So we're going to drill here with the drill bit and a drill press, and then after that we're going to take this screw, and this screw is going to go from the board to the board on the saw, which you'll see in a second, and then that'll stick it to that pivot point so we can turn it and then put it through the saw so that we can get a circle. And then we're going to go through, turn it, through, turn it, through, turn it, and eventually it's going to make a perfect circle. So here's the result from the first one, and as long as you're careful, it's going to be exactly circular. So for the next two, do not change anything on the saw from the blade over to that guide. Do not change that length because you want the circle is going to be the same size on these two. So I'm going to go drill a hole and do these two. So now we have all three of our cylinders. As you notice, they fit together pretty nicely because we drilled these cylinders all with the same radius, or rather cut the cylinders. So now, to get this taper that you see here, see how it's like kind of curved? That's needed because it centers the belt, so when the belt is moving this way, the force actually pushes the belt this way because it's curved. So to get these, you're going to want to keep the saw the same way it was, except for what you're going to do is tilt the blade. You're going to want to tilt the blade a little bit and then move that guide inwards a tiny bit. And when I say a little bit, like 2-3 degrees, that's it. That's all you're going to want to do. And then you're going to want to move it a couple millimeters to the right, because that's going to get this like 3-degree angle or whatnot to come up to this center one. So you want it very small in order to get it to the correct angle. Also, we are only making the tapers on these outside ones if it's not obvious, because the inside one has to stay exactly straight so that the belt can ride on it nicely. But the outer two, we want them to have the curve on the right side and the left side. After cutting that about 3-degree angle, I did another 5-degree, but I only did it up to about halfway, so you can kind of see where there's the 3-degree right here and then the 5-degree right here. So that gives it a little bit more taper. So after all the angles are cut, it kind of looks like this. It's obviously not perfect, but we're going to fix that in a little bit by sanding it. So next, take your little template thing if you have one. We're going to want to put it on top here, and we already know where the center is, so you can kind of just stick a screw in here to make it center. And then you're going to mark out either, it doesn't really matter, 2, 4, or even 3, and we're going to drill those. I'm going to do 2, so 1, 2. We're going to drill 2 holes all the way through all of these, and then we're going to put these screws in. So those are going to connect all of these together. And then after we do that, we can drill out this hole larger, and then what's going to happen is that we're going to take a bolt and we're going to feed this up through, and then at the end here we're going to put this in the drill press so that this whole thing will be rotating, and then basically we're going to just use the drill press as a lathe so that we can sand it down to make it a little bit better. That turned out pretty well. It's pretty nicely blended, and overall I think it looks great, honestly. I also want to specify that I'm not using a table saw for fun. It's definitely doable with a table saw, but if you have any other means of doing it, like a bandsaw or something, it's probably a little bit safer and easier. I just don't have a bandsaw or really any other means of creating this, like a router or anything. So the next step, as you can see from this one, you have to drill this through hole, and that through hole has to be a little bit bigger than these axle things right here. So I have this drill bit 3/4, so I'm gonna drill that all the way through, except you have to be really careful that this goes exactly in the center. And then after that, what you do is take this one, probably not the same for whatever bearing you're using, but one that is a tiny bit smaller than that bearing. You don't want to make it bigger because then it'll be really loose fitting. But what we're going to do is only drill this center one here, and then it's going to be taken apart beforehand, but only drill the center one. And then you're going to take a Dremel with a sanding bit and go around and around and around until the bearing just barely fits in there, and then you're going to pound it in so that it's like press fit basically, and then it'll be nicely stuck right in there so that it won't spin inside the wood, and it'll spin like it should. So drill this hole. Before you take it apart, what you're going to want to do is, next to one of these screws, just make a little arc line, so like that. So then when you take it apart, you're going to be able to figure out which part goes with which, because if you turn it upside down, the arc is going to be the other way. If you rotate it, then the arc's not going to be on the right side. So this is exactly how you put it together. That's important because if you mess up putting it back together, and it's not going to fit well, and it's going to be really annoying, and then you're going to have to switch it, turn it, figure out which way it was originally. But this is how you can be sure of which way you put it together the first time. So next, I'm going to unscrew these, take out the middle, drill the middle with this bigger one, and then after that, Dremel out the middle a little bit, and then we're going to pound this bearing in. So once you have gotten it Dremeled out enough on the outside to get the bearing in a little bit, you need to then get a flat surface. So I'm just using this leftover stuff, and then basically have to pound the bearing in. So you gotta take like a piece of wood or something. So this is just one of the ones that I failed at, and you want to just smack it. Ooh. So basically what that's going to do is just make it so that the bearing is flush with this face of wood, which is perfect because then it's gonna spin correctly. So after we do that, we're gonna reassemble everything and then should be done. Here's our finished bearing. So it looks pretty nice. Through hole, it spins pretty nicely. And then to test it, we can just put it right on one of these. Looks like it spins pretty good to me. It's a little wobbly, but that's kind of expected. Never gonna get crazy perfect circle or anything, so, but I think that's good enough. So I decided on the treadmill motor. I'm just gonna simply cut this back part. I'm gonna cut this much off and then weld a bolt to it, and then the way I'm gonna get it correctly in the middle is that I'm gonna use one of those dial indicators and then spin it, and then use a dial indicator and spin it so I can make sure it's right in the middle. Also seal these off and try to get as least slag as I can all over this stuff. So first things first is to take a cutoff wheel, cut this whole thing off. Probably gonna cut from here, since this is a nice cylinder, and I can just weld it just like this. So it's cut off, and this might be a pretty stupid idea, but I'm gonna turn the motor on and then grind it a little bit so I can try to get it perfectly flat. So that actually seemed to do a pretty good job. It's pretty darn flat. Let's see if I can, yeah. So here's the result. It is actually quite balanced, surprisingly. Can't spin it for whatever reason, but it's quite balanced actually. Now it spins. So it's not that bad. I mean, you can see it spinning a little bit, but that's also me moving the camera. And then, so I got that welded. I got so fed up with the magnet and stuff, I literally just held it in place, and it turned out to be pretty balanced. I'm gonna turn it on for a second just to show that it's not like crazy unbalanced, so I think it should work fine. So now that I have this bolt welded on, kind of centered, I obviously have these 3 wheels. The next step is to make this 1 wheel, and it's not going to have a bearing in the middle because it's just going to spin on the bolt. So I'm going to essentially make the same thing as the outside of this, drill a smaller through hole about to the end, like minus an inch or so, and then I'm going to put a bolt on the bottom and then a bolt all the way through, and then just pinch together the wood basically. Might throw a washer in there too to help it out a little bit, but I'm gonna make this wheel right now. So right now I'm just putting in the nut onto the treadmill motor with a deep socket, and then I put it in with the locking part on the bottom because that gives me a flat surface. And then, well, I guess these washers don't fit, so I'm not going to use them. Now we'll pound on the wheel a little bit, and then the other one will go on top like this with the locking part facing out, so that the flat parts of both nuts can be towards the wood. So I just put a belt on. I'm gonna try it outside because my luck it's gonna like explode or something. So I can already notice that when I turn this one, the tensioner goes up and down, so that's going to be a lot of vibration. But let's see what happens, I guess. Yeah, so there's a lot of vibration going on there. And then these wheels aren't lined up with these, so it's trying to pull the belt up a little bit. I want to see if I can change the tensioner. If I turn this bolt, will it help at all, maybe? Yeah, I can't really turn it with my hands, but I'm going to turn it up and see what happens, I guess. Yeah, that was kind of scary. So I feel like it definitely does move a little bit better when it's like this. I just tilted it down a little bit, but it's a little bit more stable. Let me try to show you if it'll start. I'm just going to try to sand down this aluminum. I noticed that the wheels are actually cool, and it's the part that gets hot. So I might be able to 3D print them actually, but here's what happened. This part is lower, so it didn't sand, but this part actually did sand. So I guess I might be able to just 3D print them, which will make it a lot more symmetrical. Because then I can just put the bearing in the 3D print, and then should be pretty precise. But besides that, I mean, it functions. It's a little wobbly, but I think with some better wheels it will be a lot better. You might also know that it's kind of cyclic in the shaking, so what I think is happening is that sometimes the bump on one wheel, like where it's bigger, aligns with the bump on the other wheel, which is smaller, which makes it kind of go like this. So if there was 3D printed wheels, it probably wouldn't be an issue because it would likely be very similar in like radius. So I'm gonna give this some more thought, but I mean, so far the project has been fun. So I sanded down the wheels a little bit, mostly this one because that one was the most issue. And when I turn it on, it's actually very loud, but when I turn it on, it is actually a little bit better than it was before. So I might continue sanding down or just leave it as it is, because I mean, it works. It's definitely not perfect, but for a DIY project, I'm pretty happy with it, and I'm pretty proud of what I've made, especially my first like metal working thing. Some things I might note is that this 1/8 inch plate right here definitely needs some support, so either maybe a plate on the backside here welded perpendicularly so this can't flex in and out, because I noticed there is a lot of wiggle room there. But as for the tubing goes, I think the tubing is holding up pretty well. So let me turn it on real quick and show you guys how it looks a little bit after the wheels are sanded just a little bit. I only took like half an hour just to sand them down a little bit, but yeah. So you can see there's still a lot of jiggle going like this and like this on these belts right here, but it definitely does work. And the only other thing I'm thinking is I need to better align these so the belt is way over there, but that's also due to the fact that this wheel, the adjuster wheel, is too far out, so I need to adjust it left a little bit, and I think it should track a little bit better. But I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I think it works great actually, and definitely going to do some modifications and make it a little bit better. But that pretty much concludes this video. After doing a little bit of modifications, I think it should work great. So I'm happy you guys stuck around for this end result here, and I may or may not do an update when I paint all this. I'm likely going to paint all this black just to make it look a little bit better, and then show you guys possibly the upgrades and the few modifications I've made to make it work a little bit better. But as of now, it's working. I'm happy, I'm proud of it, and I hope you guys liked the video, and I hope it helped you if you decide to make one of these. It was definitely a fun project, so be sure to like this video and subscribe if you're interested in more projects. I'm gonna likely be doing some more around this kind of area, and yeah, thank you guys, have a good day. So thank you guys for sticking around for part 8. This is the final video for the DIY series. We finally completed the belt sander. As you can see here, our final design has basically achieved what we were going for in the initial design, and I'm happy with the outcome, and I hope you guys are too. I hope you found this enjoyable. If you did, leave a like and subscribe. I'm likely going to be doing more DIY videos like this, and probably post an update video to this on the minor modifications I've made to make this belt sander better. So thank you and have a good day.